Hello, Leafs fans, and welcome to the Babbling Buds Podcast, hosted by Jordan Jacklin.
Welcome to the third episode of the Babbling Buds Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Jordan Jacklin, a twice-a-week show covering the Toronto Maple Leafs and the NHL as a whole, bringing in a mix of various analytics and the eye test when discussing players and the team. I thank you for joining me today, and to make sure you don't miss out on any future episodes, follow us on Twitter at the Babbling Buds to stay up to date on all news surrounding the show. It's a pleasure to announce today's guest, Josh Kim, a freelance photographer and Winnipeg Jets reporter for the Hockey Writers. Make sure to follow his Twitter at @JoshKim_. And my first question to you, Josh, is I've noticed you haven't tweeted about the Leafs at all since their Game 7 loss. How are you holding up?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I even though I write about the Jets primarily, I'm a huge Leaf fan, as a lot of people know, a lot of my friends and colleagues know. I just try to distance myself from that, partly due to convenience and partly due to circumstance, really. One of the reasons was, as a Leaf fan, a lifelong Leaf fan, I've been a diehard fan ever since I was a kid. Seeing them lose that game, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, seeing them lose that game was definitely unpleasant, to say the least. And for me, I just felt like I already said everything I wanted to say. I already got all my thoughts out there in the public space. I already interacted with a bunch of people, asking them how they thought about the game or how the game went for them. And really, I just didn't see the need to talk about it anymore. So that was the primary reason. The secondary reason, just due to pleasant circumstance. The Jets moved on. I focused a lot about, teeing up the matchup between the Habs and the Jets there. Got a couple articles out in between that period of time, just to, I don't know if it was to distract myself, but really just to focus on something else hockey related, and really just to kind of close the book on that chapter of the season. I know obviously for a lot of Leaf fans, it ended in disappointment, but just to have some closure in that regard and just kind of move on and move past that, I think I really needed to do that. So to answer your question, I haven't tweeted about the Leafs in a while, and for good reason.
Curious, Josh, just before we head into the past Leaf events in the 4 days since their Game 7 loss related, I'm just curious. I want to know if there were any thoughts that you thought at the time, immediately after the game, that you kind of regret now.
Not really any major regret, because I said like two main things. I said that, the Leafs deserved to lose that game. I said the refs sucked. So that was definitely one that I definitely don't regret, because there were definitely some blatantly missed calls in Game 7. Not that that's an excuse or anything, but that should be taken into consideration. And then I also said that Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews didn't show up for the entire series. And I don't regret that either, because it's true. They didn't really show up. I pride myself on the fact that I'm not one of those crazy, irrational people that just tweets whatever they're thinking, and whether it makes sense or not. I think I know what you're talking about. I saw a bunch of people, asking if Marner should be traded, asking what they do now, all that.
They're still asking that now.
And they're still asking that now. And it's been a few days after that heartbreaking loss. So even that, I really pride myself on not doing that, because like I don't see the rationale in doing that. It just doesn't make any sense. And I know people are heated up, and I know people are so passionate right after a loss that they're gonna react like that. But after a couple days go by, you're gonna come to regret those things. And for me, I just never saw the point in doing that. I never saw the point in tweeting from your heart. I never saw any of that. You need to really think through what you say before you say something. And that just makes me laugh whenever I see all those hilarious claims on Twitter. So no, I don't regret it. I will not regret anything I said after the loss. And really, I just taking some time to think about it and process it yourself was probably the best way to go after stuff like that happens.
Well, I like the confidence, Josh. You should play for the Leafs. They could use some of that. And let's just break this down. Toronto just collapsed. They blew a 3-1 series lead against the Montreal Canadiens, and they played their worst game, really, in Game 7. What a surprise. Looking at some of the underlying numbers, JFresh Hockey's model actually pointed the Leafs dominated the 3 games they won in this series, but the other 4 were toss-ups. Carey Price was legitimately great. Sorry, playoff price I would say is definitely real in my eyes, and he boosted the team with a goal saved above expected of 6.2 so far in these playoffs, which is tied for third in the whole league. With your eyes, Josh, how did you view the Leafs in this series from games 1 to 7?
Underwhelming for a lack of a better word. I mean, I like you said, Carey Price was amazing, and maybe that's one of the things I do regret because a friend of mine, Michaela Garashi, who we both go to school with, noted Leaf fan as well. She said she was very nervous about the fact that we were playing Montreal and that Carey Price enters this whole other universe where he plays like a god for the entire series. And I believed her because I saw what happened last year when the Habs played the Penguins and that he went off. I didn't believe it in the sense that like this would like be a huge difference maker in the series, like a game changing difference maker in the series. I was wrong about that, so I'm just going to get that out there now. I was definitely wrong about doubting Carey Price. Um, I do give him credit for that, but I did not expect him to ball out like the way he did, you know, like we just saw over the course of the 7 games. He was like above and beyond Montreal's best player, and it wasn't even close. So with that in mind, the Leafs were rather underwhelming. I mean, you look at the games that they won, they dominated. And the games that they lost, it was kind of the opposite. I mean, you're up 3-1 in the series and you have like 3 chances to close it out and you can't muster together a complete effort in one of those 3 games to get the job done. There are so many problems and really they can be attributed to very simple things. The first thing that comes to mind is just cracking under pressure. I mean, the 2 games that go to overtime, games 5 and 6. Wow. I don't know how you manage to lose back-to-back games in like the exact same way with 2 atrocious turnovers. And like, so first of all, that's
They
like
played so good in the game 6 overtime too.
Yeah, I know that just adds insult to injury because we lost. Galchenyuk, what are you doing, man? I don't know what that was. A blind spinning backhand pass across the blue line. That's like textbook hockey not to do. Travis Dermott doing his best PK Subban impression, just twirling like a ballerina in his own zone.
He did it in game 7 too, and I saw everybody complaining about that.
Yeah,
you gotta like the confidence to go back.
So
to it.
Exactly, yeah, but it looks awful if it doesn't work, and most of the time it doesn't work. So those 2 things obviously stand out because they were, they clinched the game for Montreal. Like that everyone, whenever people think about games 5 and 6 of the series years from now, that's what they're going to attribute it to. Number 2, this is more of a running constant for everybody. Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, man. I'm sorry. I also pride myself on not hating on any player unnecessarily, but man, were they invisible this entire series. I couldn't believe it. Matthews is coming off a Rocket Richard winning season. Mitch Marner finishes top 5 in the league in scoring, and you just disappear? Like 1 point between the 2 of them and across 7 games or something crazy like that. Like it was you can expect your star players to regress a little bit from the regular season because the playoffs are a different animal, but that was some kind of regression, man. They went from being some of the best players in the world to just being invisible, being nobodies. I could not believe it. I genuinely could not believe how ineffective they were across the 7 games. And that's the old adage that just is a testament to the fact that if your best players don't show up night after night, you're not going to win. And the Leafs looked like they were cruising along without them. And then when they really needed them most in that crucial stretch where they had to close out the series, they just didn't show up. And I for one thing, I hate to play devil's advocate here because I don't, even though they didn't really perform at the level that, a lot of people were expecting, I don't think that categorizes them as like regular season stars only. Like I still think they can perform in the playoffs. I have confidence. They're still young players. I think a lot of people forget that.
I'll say this, I believe leading up to game 7, they were outscoring the Philip Deneau line. Like they were outplaying them. They even outplayed them technically in game 7. I believe they each had expected goals for numbers like in the 60% percentile range. But the thing with a shutdown center like Philip Deneau, that's kind of what they're going for.
Yeah,
they might be getting outplayed, but like
it might not have been Deneau specifically. But I think Carey Price, again, I go back to Carey Price. I think he played a massive role in that entire, concept of shutting them down. But like I said, if you can't perform in the playoffs and you're your team's best players, you're not going to win. You can't really expect to win that much. And as unfortunate as that sounds, It's true. And we just saw it unfold right now. And really those are kind of the two defining characteristics of this series, really. And that's really unfortunate because it was everyone's expectations were riding high after game 4, and to have them collapse like this in this particular fashion where your best players don't even seem to be competing, and when you lose 2 games in overtime after off of atrocious turnovers, that's going to be the story. And as unfortunate as that's the reality of right now.
Well, yeah, I agree with all the points you're making there, Josh. And, coming off this Game 7 loss, yet again, the end of season press conferences happened yesterday. And we have to hear a lot of the same quotes from most of the players and the management. I was actually quite impressed, though, with Brendan Shanahan's comments about how the team needs to address their lack of killer instincts, whether that's externally or with the guys they have. I liked his talk. I like some of his quotes, too, about how they want to win with the guys they have there. They're clearly dedicated to this group. You saw it with Kyle Dubas's comments from "We Can and We Will" from years ago. He's still holding true to that by the sounds of it. And Brendan Shanahan is giving him the green light to be like this. I'm just curious, do you think it's possible that the Leafs can do it with the core 4 of Marner, Matthews, Tavares, Nylander? I know John Tavares, obviously, what happened to him. He was absent in this series. They couldn't get it done for him. He was probably going to be ready for round 2 by the sounds of it. There was talk of him potentially playing in Game 7, which I don't think would have been a great idea. I mean, I'm no health expert, obviously, but I'm just curious, Josh, do you think it really is possible for the Leafs to do it with these 4 core players making the amount of money that they do?
Oh, it's definitely possible. And to say for anyone to take that series alone and say, sell everything, redo it, man, people forget how hard this organization worked to get to where they are now. And yes, I know the playoff history, the curse, the curse theories by a lot of fans, all that definitely doesn't scream confidence and definitely doesn't put the organization in a good spot. But they're still young players. This core still has a long time to go together. And there's one thing that I want to point out to people is that a lot of the times structuring your roster around your star players is an incredibly tedious process, and it takes some trial and error. I'm not excusing it at all because they should have won that series, but I want people to keep in mind that the Leafs genuinely opted for leadership and grit over supplementary talent. So instead of bringing in Taylor Hall, they get Nick Foligno. Instead of Riley Nash is in there. And one thing that I think is probably going through Kyle Dubas's mind right now is maybe we need to focus more on goal scoring and speed rather than the leadership. I think obviously hindsight is 2020. So I'm not saying this I'm saying this literally from a now perspective. We never would have considered this if this didn't happen. Maybe they might have overcompensated a little bit with the leadership aspect of things. I know it's hard for people to understand that it's literally impossible to overcompensate people. A lot of people think that you can never have too much of leadership, grit, and playoff experience and all that. But when you're structuring a team around that needs depth scoring, and when you don't have your superstars showing up, maybe you need that 1A scorer, that second line winger that can score a goal here and there to actually get things done. Everyone out behind Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, who is injured, and Marner, the goal scoring isn't like huge. Like it is, especially in the playoffs, it's not huge. It's really not. So maybe the play next year or whenever that the opportunity arises, maybe the play is to get a depth scorer, a 1A type winger that can supplement the goal scoring from Matthews and Marner if Matthews and Marner don't show up. Going for the gritty route didn't really pay off necessarily. I would say in hindsight, it didn't really, I think Kyle Dubas would be the first person to admit that it didn't reap the benefits that everyone thought it would. And again, that's hindsight speaking, and I am speaking from hindsight perspective here. So maybe you try something different, or maybe you try and not have as much leadership and kind of balance it out 2v2 and here and there. And so it's definitely something to consider. But when you don't have your superstars show up and you don't have any supplementary scoring and all you have is leadership, that's not really going to get you a lot of places. And especially if you're running into a red hot goalie, leadership doesn't score the goals for you. So that's just my 2 cents. I had a lot of time to think about that. And I know some people are probably going to disagree with me on that because they think that the Leafs need grit and leadership and all that. But we just saw what happens here. If you don't have scoring, you're not going to win. And that's exactly what happened.
Well, Josh, I do find it funny that in hockey culture, you can't have too much grit and leadership, but you can't have too much skill, according to some people. The Colorado Avalanche are literally built on too much skill. Devon Tays, Sam Girard, they have Bowen Byram coming up the ranks, and then most importantly, they have Cale Makar. These are all defensemen. Devon Tays is a guy who honestly could play his way into a Norris Trophy role someday. There are people that legitimately believe he could be on Team Canada's blue line, and why not? Because he's just produced excellent results according to his even strength numbers at 5v5, and I want players like that on my team, man. Even though I've kind of been looking back on this recently, I wonder what if the Leafs should have tried to acquire Mackenzie Weegar when they had the opportunity last summer for Travis Dermott and Andreas Janssen, because looking how he stepped up in the absence of Aaron Ekblad and how he was able to play, he could have potentially taken over Justin Hall's spot. Not necessarily that Justin Hall was a problem in this series, maybe at times, but I just wonder if those type of if there was some rationale behind Dubas's thinking that limited some of his thinking. Obviously, Taylor Hall. I looking back on it, I did try to justify that Taylor Hall shouldn't have been a Leaf. You know, there were all the rumors circulating about that player, and looking back on it, he would have been a Leaf if there was a trade to be made. I think, you know, it's easy to say he only went to Boston, and maybe there was. I mean, it's easy. Maybe there was some pressure to go to Boston more than some of the other teams. But if the Leafs really wanted him, they could have used the first they paid for Foligno to get Taylor Hall. I'm sure you could have made the equivalent trade. And who knows how it would look now. Maybe it would still be a Game 7 loss. Maybe we would be looking at something completely different. There's just too much to tell in hindsight. I do think the Leafs will change their priorities this offseason. That's quite clearly something Kyle Dubas does, is adapt season by season. And you kind of just want that with your general manager, and by adapting, we got to address some of the players that do kind of have a questionable future, according to the media, maybe just fan speculation. Let's start with Mitch Marner. Obviously, 0 goals in his last 18 playoff games. We've heard that just so much over the past 3 days here in Toronto. He looked completely frustrated after taking his second puck over the glass penalty in Game 7. Made a brutal turnover on the Gallagher goal, and I know Jack Campbell should have stopped that, but Mitch Marner probably shouldn't be making that turnover, blindly passing it like that into the neutral zone. He didn't look like the player that was 4th in league scoring. And I just want to know, Josh, what did the Leafs do with this player? Is a trade possible, or do they need to figure it out? Because in my mind, unless you're literally acquiring Jack Eichel somehow, and I don't think, let's just be real, I don't think you're somehow making an interdivisional trade like that for Jack Eichel. Because if you can, yeah, sure, do it. I just don't think it's really likely. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it.
It is impossible that Mitch Marner gets traded. Kyle Dubas said it himself. There's no way the Leafs are trading this guy. There's no way they should trade this guy. Again, this goes back to people overreacting when they lose. I mean, we've been in part of Leafs Nation for God knows how long now. We know that people overreact when they lose. We know that the media overreacts, loves to grab those clickbait headlines all about questioning whether this player is going to be traded or this player is not going to be re-signed or all that stuff. We know this by now. That all is complete and utter garbage. We know this. Mitch Marner, this case is more the same, man. You got to play the long run with this guy. This is still a young player. He still has a limitless potential, especially in the playoffs, because he's motivating and because he hasn't produced in the playoffs yet. That you do not give up on one of your best players if they don't produce 1 year in the playoffs. If they don't produce 2 years in the playoffs, you do not give up. You don't let a player like that walk. No, Mitch Marner has proven time and time again why he was drafted 4th overall. He has proven time and time again that he's one of the best wingers in the NHL right now. 1 or 2 bad postseasons is not nearly enough reason to trade him. And I know why people like talking about it. I know why people like going off and like starting all these stupid discussions. But Mitch Marner is still one of the cornerstones of this franchise and will be 40 years to come. Why would you give up on that? And more importantly, I guess if you are going down that rabbit hole, who would you get to replace Mitch Marner? First of all, the chemistry between him and Austin Matthews has been unmatched over the course of their career.
Although they should have changed that line. Let's be real. They should have put Nylander on the Matthews line for the second half of that series.
Maybe
Nylander was a different player.
And he was on their line for more than a few shifts.
I liked it, and I know they had positive possession results. They had legitimate dangerous chances too.
But that's not even enough reason to trade a generational talent like Marner. There's no way. And that if you want to start trading people, you do not look at your superstars first. That is like rule number one when it comes to managing a hockey team. Any sports team actually. If there is a problem in your organization and it's not directly correlated with one player, you are not looking. Your superstar, your cornerstone, one of the cornerstones of your franchise is not the first target on the trade block. There's no way. So talk about it all you want. It makes great Twitter threads. It makes idiotic Twitter threads. Like, he's not going anywhere, guys.
Like, in my mind, this is kind of reminding me of two scenarios. So first off, we all remember when Tampa Bay was swept by Columbus, just in astronomical trade rumors coming out of that. We all got to hear the funny end of season, I believe, release that the team had afterwards, where they said they were just basically pointing out, how awful the season that ending was, and we're so greatly disappointed and all that. And then they come out the next year, they basically don't make any changes besides the trade deadline, acquiring Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow, who I guess in Pierre McGuire's eyes are not analytics guys, by the way. Those are analytics guys. Those guys are very good by eye test, analytics, everything. And they were able to get over the hump. And then guess what? They didn't not only just beat Columbus the very next year, they won the Stanley Cup. So I think, in my eyes, there's some comparison here to be made with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Alex Ovechkin went the first 14 years of his career before winning the Stanley Cup. I remember he didn't even get past the second round. That was the Washington Capitals hump for the whole time. And for the Toronto Maple Leafs, yeah, it seems like it's never going to end. Trust me. I had all those same thoughts as well. I'm sure you did do at times, Josh. This Leafs team they lose in ways that no other teams and any other professional sports teams lose, like, except maybe the Dallas Cowboys. I think Stephen A. Smith had a good point there, but it's difficult to talk about, but you gotta believe in these guys. And I'm glad we have a rational thinker in Kyle Dubas, and I'm glad that these guys genuinely do seem to believe in each other, because with this core group of guys, I do envision some success eventually coming along. I just think it's going to take longer than most think. But I think if you're really trying to build a team, you gotta keep your stars, man, and you gotta build around them. And the guy that you gotta build around them, that they've done so far is Zach Hyman. And I listened to Steve Angle podcast's newest episode, and they're anticipating the arrival of Chris Johnson on Friday. And it does sound like CJ believes Zach Hyman will not return unless a big change happens. The Leafs have gotten such a sweet.
That would be catastrophic if Zach Hyman walked in free agency. And okay. I'm just putting that out there now. I hope and I'm confident that almost all Leaf fans know what essential role he plays in this organization. If he leaves, period. But if he leaves to, let's say, another team in the Eastern Conference when the divisions realign and all that stuff, oh man, this I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to say that if he leaves, this organization is taking a step back. Like, I can't even begin to describe what his importance to this team, and that especially that top line. I'm just saying it'd be disastrous if he left.
No, regardless. And I mean, he's only made 2.25 the last 4 years, and he scored at, I believe, a 30-goal pace and 60-point pace this past season, and he did it 2 years ago. He's consistently elevated his play. And remember, this guy was traded for Grant McKaig. That was such an underrated trade made at the time. And Kyle Dubas did that as an interim general manager, actually. And, you can't – we're going to get right into this right now. How do you even replace what Hyman brings to this team and as a top six forward?
You can't. Because there are so few players still like him in the league today that not only play the role that the way that he does, but does it consistently night in, night out, and helps drive one of the best lines in the league. That alone makes him one of the most valuable players on this team. Obviously not more valuable than Mitch or Austin. I know that dialogue was started across this season, especially at TSN, but you nailed it right on the head. I mean, there is no way this guy should walk, but he's going to get paid. And teams have definitely noticed the type of energy that he brings and the type of role that he can play in. He's going to get paid. And
how much do you pay him, though?
Okay, so my first thought, because I was getting to that, but my first thought in terms of like a contract structure, was I'm thinking about the Nylander deal. The Nylander makes 6.9, I think, over the course of the next 5 years or something like that.
No, he has, I believe, 4 years left on his deal. The same
4 years left.
Yeah.
At just under 7. Okay, so the goal scoring is not there with Hyman. We all know this. He's not a huge goal scorer. He'll be on pace for about 20-ish around there, but that's not what he's known for. He's that spark plug guy. I don't see him making any less than 5.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes to free agency, man, a team they've even been rumored apparently to be interested in him, and that's the Edmonton Oilers. Imagine Zach Hyman and Connor McDavid's
man,
line.
That would really complete the Oilers' top line.
And they got 22 million. Really. They got 22 million to spend this year in free agency.
I know.
As well.
So 5 is probably like the ballpark, but like I see some teams going 5.5 for a guy like that. Like the teams that can afford to spend that much.
But this is the thing, man. Like
I guess it just depends on what he needs, like what his needs are. I know he's a Toronto kid. I know that. I know he loves playing in the city. We all know this. He just had a kid, I think. So I think all that plays into a role of also where the organization is at and stuff like that. But he wants money. I think all hockey players want money, and you barely see any people take like that hometown discount, except Ilya Mikheyev did. I think a lot of people forget about that, but for Zach Hyman and the role that he plays, the Leafs, I know Kyle Dubas is not going to let him go, at least without a fight, anything. But I think they should pull out all the stops to sign that guy, because this guy, over the past 3-4 years, has done more than was expected of him when he got here. So he deserves it, and he needs to come back, badly.
But this is a flat cap world, man. Like, can you afford to pay Zach Hyman a $3 million raise per season? When, I mean, you're basically giving them Alex Kerfoot's money. Then you're going to have to replace Kerfoot with a league minimum player, because he seems to be the guy that's most likely going to be going to the Seattle.
Yeah, and this is the predicament that the Leafs find themselves in. I think this is one of those. Obviously, I wouldn't be saying this if they made it past the first round, but because they didn't do that, this is a bit of a tough spot for them, because for one, they have a bunch of expiring contracts. They brought in a bunch of veterans and a bunch of rentals on 1-year deal. I know Galchenyuk is up there. All the veterans, Simmons, Spezza, Thornton, Foligno, Riley Nash is on an expiring contract. So that's the downside of bringing in all those guys. Number 2, I wouldn't say they have a bunch of prospects that are ready to make the jump. I know Rodion Amirov came to the city, but he's never played in North America.
He's going to be in the KHL next season. That's confirmed. But he's training with
not.
The Leafs development.
I know people were like, "Oh my gosh, he's in the city now. He's watching the games. He might play." No, he's not close, and he's going back to Russia for sure. Nick Robertson, I think, is on the brink of making the team, because I know he's suited up in a couple games. He had a brutal, tough year this year with a bunch of injuries. Adam Brooks is another name that I think can slot into the big club if needed, but nobody there jumps off the page to me and says, "Here I am. I'm ready for the league right now. Put me in next year." Nobody in their farm system is quite there yet. I know. I actually, in fact, a lot of people like SDA, Simeon Dur, Argachintsev is still transitioning to that. Mikhail Abramov is still in the QMJHL. So you have all your top prospects that are not ready to make the jump to, the big leagues. Even the AHL, they're still transitioning. So with all those expiring contracts and with all those people, all the prospects that are not ready to make the team next year, I don't know where you go from here, because it seems to me that I hate saying this because I thought about this earlier and I really didn't want to think about it like this, but it seemed like if any year was going to be the year to make it, this would be the year. And because that didn't happen,
seemed like that.
Now they're I don't know what Kyle Dubas has planned. So I'll preface that by saying I don't know what Kyle Dubas has planned this offseason. But this going into next year, it kind of feels like this team is going to be in the middle of the road. With you have your generational talents all performing really well, but beyond them, you have prospects that are not quite ready, and you have a bunch of expiring contracts heading into the summer. What you do to build a roster that was better than last year's team, I have no idea.
Toronto isn't finishing first. They're not going to finish first next season, especially when they go back.
If the Atlantic comes back, they're not finishing first.
They're going to be second or third, and
most likely, maybe even fourth if Boston can re-sign Hall. Because if that happens, then we're all screwed. But we're thinking if the Atlantic comes back, it's wild because a lot of the teams that made the playoffs were actually from the Atlantic Division. Like, it's crazy. So you have Tampa, Florida in there. You have Boston. You have Montreal, who apparently we hate now and we can't get past at all. And then there's us. Everyone after that kind of sucks because it's
What
Ottawa.
about the Ottawa Senators? They're even going to be getting better.
Yeah, but they're not going to
They
make
won't
the
make
playoff.
it. But are they going to be last?
They're
Is
not
Detroit
going to be last now. Detroit's going to be last. No, actually, you know what? Buffalo's going to be last. Buffalo's going to be last.
Oh,
then it's going to be
God.
Detroit, and then Ottawa. Ottawa actually could give everyone else a run for their money, so I think everyone should keep that in mind. But if you look at that Atlantic Division next year and where the teams align this year, holy crap! If I'm Kyle Dubas, I am crapping my pants right now because all the talent that was like half the teams that made the playoffs this year were from the Atlantic. Like, all that talent is going to flood right back into one division. And you and as the Leafs as a team are most likely not going to be better than the team that they iced on the ice this year. So what that equates to in the long run, like next year and the year after, when the Atlantic Division is back in order, I have no idea what that means for this organization. I have no idea. So my guess, the predicament that they find themselves in is, A, do they re-sign? Like, do they let go of the veterans that they want to let go, re-sign the people that they want to re-sign, and then go out and get people that play similar roles to the players that they lost? Or do they kind of stand pat and kind of begin the transitioning process of getting your top prospects to form into serviceable NHL players? And I guess that's the question that Kyle Davis is facing right now, because there are, like I said, there's a bunch of expiring contracts right now. You're going to have a much tougher year next year when the Atlantic Division comes back in order. So what position do you want to put your organization, your team in order to set themselves up for that illustrious future that we all thought was going to happen years ago? So, when you think about it like that, obviously it doesn't look great, but you have to consider that Tampa Bay, Florida, Boston are all coming back into the division next year. And okay, so actually, now that we're on that, I'm gonna just break down the teams that the team, I should say,
go for it.
The teams that are coming back in. So I think a lot of Boston's success depends on whether they bring back Taylor Hall. He was great with them. I don't know if that's enough to push his contract out of the budget range of the Bruins, but I know they're gonna sell out for him. They're gonna bring him back as hard as they can.
Well, their first line makes like all of those guys make like $3 million less than they probably should.
I know. That's the biggest team friendly deal ever. And I don't think Boston or the top line planned that, but it just happened to turn out that way. So that actually puts Boston in a great spot to do something like bringing back Taylor Hall. So if they bring him back, look out, because if they bring him back, like at least for like a 3-4 year deal, again, look out, because he was great with them. I think a lot of their future success depends on whether they can bring him back or who they can replace.
Oh, trust me, because their 5-on-5 scoring before they acquired him was actually in the bottom third in terms of various metrics like expected goals for, stuff like that. They were a bad looking team in that East Division this season. Look, before that trade deadline, completely different once
so I'd say that team probably, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that team scares me the least when it comes to competition and all that. I know we had our trouble against Boston, but I think that team scares me the least because I feel like they're kind of moving past that, dynasty era in the mid 2000s. Florida, another scary team because they've got a bunch of young players that are further along the road than Toronto prospects. So they have a lot of young players that really stepped up. I mean, my goodness, the depth on that team is crazy. Not only Barkov and Huberdeau are two of the best players in the league. We all know this. Spencer Knight is gunning for a roster spot next year, and he's only 20. So you have your franchise goalie there right behind Bobrovsky, who is not great, but that's besides the point. Mackenzie Weegar was practically Norris-esque in the absence of Aaron Ekblad, and Aaron Ekblad had a great year before he got hurt. That is a really good team. Like, and we haven't even gotten to the depth, like Owen Tippett and Carter Verhaeghe and all that.
Trust me, like Bill Zito, man, this guy, more people should be talking about this guy. His player evaluation skills, like the fact that everybody thought Sam Bennett would be an overpaid guy at the trade deadline. He only pays a second-round pick, and I believe it was, I forget exactly who the prospect was. It was a middle league prospect who I believe has bottom six potential. I heard his name before. Bennett puts up 15 points in 11 games in Florida, and yeah, he obviously made that a brutal play in game one in the Tampa series. But if he can play anywhere, like even 70 to 80% of what he showed in the regular season next year in Florida, look out, man, because
Yeah, so that team should scare a lot of people, and the fact that they're coming back into a loaded Atlantic will make things very interesting because we never before like the past couple seasons, we never saw Florida as like this huge threat to steal the division, but now they're a legitimate playoff contender for a long time coming because they have a good foundation set in their organization. So that's another thing. Tampa Bay, nothing has really changed since their Stanley Cup championship. Andre Vasilevsky was just nominated for the Vezina again. You're going to get a healthy Steven Stamkos. You're going to get a healthy Nikita Kucherov for the entire year. Andre Palat and Yanni Gourde stepped up big time. Braden Point is playing out of his mind, and he's one of the most clutch players in the league right now. Victor Hedman is you're going to get a Norris caliber season every single year with that guy. Mikhail Sergachev is also one of the best up and coming defensemen. Terrible look for Montreal in that trade, by the way.
Oh yeah.
But where is the weak spot on that team? And Tampa Bay has given the Leafs a lot of trouble over the past few seasons. So getting all these talented teams that are just in kind of similar positions to Toronto in the sense that they have these star players that can all compete and their entire roster is balanced and they can all fight for a playoff spot. Having all those teams back in the same division is going to make things incredibly interesting. And Montreal, Cole Caulfield is all but certainly going to be on that team next year. Like, is that even? I don't even think that's a debate. I think he's making that team.
Yeah, he's going to score 20 goals next year for sure.
For sure,
in my opinion.
And even that would be scary. And Carey Price is going to come back because he's locked up for life basically with that team. So you have 5 teams right there that can all kind of be interchanged with one another in the standings. And that's a scary thought, especially for where the Leafs are at this year with the team heading into the summer. Like I said, with all those expiring contracts and whatnot, even with that all, on your plate already, you are getting an influx of talent amongst teams back in the division. So that puts you in a very tough spot. And I'm actually really curious to see what Kyle Dubas has up his sleeve this offseason. I know he's one of the craftiest GMs and when it comes to making moves like that, but this is a tall order again. And I feel bad for him because he did the best he could to put a great roster together for the playoffs and they just couldn't get it done. So what do you change? And I guess we're going to find out.
Well, this actually leads perfectly into my next question for you, Josh. And I just let's just throw out the names of the players that currently played for the Leafs' bottom 6 forward lines this past season, who are currently going to be heading into unrestricted free agency unless they get re-signed. Riley Nash, Wayne Simmons, Nick Foligno, Alex Galchenyuk, Jason Spezza, and Joe Thornton. Who are you bringing back from all of those guys? Because in my mind, Jason Spezza is obviously coming back.
Jason Spezza, yes, that was going to be my first answer too. He's
gotta think they try to get Galchenyuk back, but sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so that beyond Jason Spezza gets incredibly challenging because there's a lot of players you can re-sign for various reasons. There's also a lot of players you can let go for various reasons. So it's going to be interesting to see, which one they pick. So first of all, I want to preface this by saying I think Zach Hyman is number one priority for sure. Even before Jason Spezza, Zach Hyman is number one priority. So that's number one. Depending on what he does, whether he re-signs or goes to a different team, I think that'll greatly impact what they do with the rest of those guys. So Hyman just for argument's sake, Hyman stays. You sign Spezza. He already said he wants to come back.
He's probably going to sign the exact same contract too.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a raise, probably $1 million per year if they can. Yeah. Spezza's coming back, guaranteed. So beyond that, the next person that I'd want to bring back is probably Wayne Simmons.
Yeah, I would like him back. He needs to be at a little bit of a discounted rate, though, I think. For
discounted rate, yes, because he was making he was making $1 million. 1.5. Jesus Christ. Okay, so if he was making 1.5 last year, he's definitely going down. Has to, because he's depreciating in value, but he still brings that veteran presence, the physicality, the grit that we need.
So I'll just say this, there was a different feeling with Wayne Simmons on this.
Exactly, there was a different feeling. You're right.
Difference. I know
exactly.
People like to make fun of that, but there was a difference.
I think that just for that alone, he needs to be back. After that, probably Galchenyuk and then Thornton. First of all, Nick Foligno, we pretty much he's guaranteed to go back to Columbus. Like this is like Thomas Buchanan-esque.
Oh yeah.
Like
There's a hilarious tweet too that came from that where it's like he'll probably do his end of season press conference in his car on the way back to Columbus. Like he's going back.
We saw that tweet even right after the deal was made. He's probably going back to Columbus after this year, and he should, because that's where his heart is, that's where his family is, that's where he's kind of built his legacy almost, aside from Ottawa. So on the concept that he's going back to Columbus, I don't think they re-sign Riley Nash. I would like them to re-sign Riley Nash because I know the sample size was really small and like he was battling injury practically the whole year. And that, honestly, as I'm saying that, that's probably the reason why they're going to let him go. But I think we should re-sign him. I think that that if there's anybody.
I'm a fan of him because if you look at his defensive metrics, he's among the best in the whole league at shutting down players.
Exactly. So if we like you said, if we lose Kerfoot to Seattle, and Riley Nash signs for a cheaper deal than Kerfoot, which he most likely will, there's your replacement right there for your third line center.
Well, he's got it because he's making $275 right now, Riley Nash.
And
I don't think he's not making that at all.
He's not. And with the season that he had, I wouldn't be shocked if he was making less next year. So if you want to get Kerfoot's contract off the books and get rid of him, there's your replacement right there. I don't like letting Kerfoot go because I know his contract is bad, but I think he really stepped it up this season especially and kind of provided value for that Barry Kerfoot Kadri trade. But on the chance that we see him leave, Riley Nash would be a great successor to that role. I think, at least. And I know Leaf fans are probably going to be like, oh, what about the depth scoring and all that? I think we can surround everyone else with depth scoring. So if we bring back Hyman, Spezza, and Riley Nash, and Simmons, say goodbye to Galch, Thornton, and I know this might
be my hot take. I think if Alex Galchenyuk goes to another team, his NHL career is over after next season.
I know, and that's what makes this hard because does Dubas gamble on the inconsistency there because he was on fire for a stretch of games, but he was invisible for others. So I know he was on kind of like an audition this year because he joined the team like halfway through the year. If you give him, let's say, a 1 to 2 year contract, maybe even 3, is that performance enough to bring him back?
A 1 year deal, a 1 year prove-it deal, in my opinion. If you can convince him, obviously.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the situations where I think actually Toronto holds the upper hand because I know if I'm Alex Galchenyuk right now and I've experienced the most success with Toronto than I have in the last 3 years in the league, I want to stay in the place where I've experienced the most success. And as soon as he left Montreal, his career kind of nosedived. And now he's kind of coming back to relevancy almost. If I'm him, I'm staying in the city and trying to do my best to stay here.
And Alex Galchenyuk only made $1 million and $50,000 this season. I don't think he can command any more from his performance.
Sign him to the same deal. Just literally copy.
He couldn't make the Ottawa Senators. He couldn't make the Ottawa Senators. That's why he got traded to Carolina, and then that ended up leading to a trade to the Toronto Maple Leafs, where he obviously looked pretty great in that.
Yeah. So if we're again on the preface that we're improving from within here, I'd like to see Hyman, Spezza back for sure. Simmons would be a nice addition. If Kerfoot leaves, Riley Nash would be a nice fit. I don't think that's going to happen because I actually think
I don't think Riley Nash should be your third line center unless you like. I think in a fourth line role, top penalty carrying minutes, I think he would be best utilized in that role.
So if we're looking at all the players that we re-signed here, it would be obviously Matthews, Marner, Hyman top line.
Oh yeah.
In a perfect world, because I really want Zach to come back. Tavares, Nylander, an empty winger spot.
I think it could be Robertson. I think but he's too young though. I don't know. And you know what? If he's good enough, why can't he play? I think he could. I think he could do it.
First of all, he joined the team and he was on the fourth line. Like if that doesn't tell me, that tells me that was
after. You're talking about his 6-game sample size after his regular season. Man, he was going to be a full-time member of this team, by the way. I have no doubt in my mind.
No, that I couldn't agree more. He's going to be an NHL player. He's probably going to be a very good NHL player as well. I think even this
past season, he would have been a full-time player had he not.
If he was healthy? If he was healthy.
Yes. I think he would have. I bet.
Well, I guess that would you rather have Galchenyuk or Robertson on the second line?
I think had Nick Robertson played to start the season, I don't even know if Alex Galchenyuk makes the Leafs, or if the Leafs trade for Galchenyuk.
Yeah, maybe. You know what? That's actually a good point. And like, I really want to see him make the team because the last 2 seasons at training camp, I really wanted him to make the team. I really wanted to see him play at the NHL level after the play-in against Columbus. So, man, but that I don't know why that's such a foreign concept to me because just I didn't see him play at all this year. So I'm a little skeptical. But if you
He did look good. He looked really good with the Toronto Marlies, though.
I wouldn't be shocked. Like if I'm Dubas there, I think I take the risk because he's been that fringe NHL player, kind of like the Adam Brooks type, but with far less games played. So if you do in fact change things up, it goes Hyman, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, Robertson, and then wow, I don't know what happens like at the bottom 6. So it's like. If Spezza, Nash, and Simmons is your 4th line, who's your 3rd line? Like Mikheyev's going to be there because he's on a deal as well. Like he's in the
Pierre Engvall, in my opinion, is gone. I do think you're likely bringing back Ilya Mikheyev. You got to teach him how to shoot in the off season.
Well, he doesn't need to be brought back because he's on a contract already. He's signed that 2-year deal.
Well, I mean, there are some like would you consider? I don't think you likely trade him, right? You probably
I don't think. Like first of all, I don't even think he would bring back that much. Given the way that he plays, like he's just almost like
because this guy he played at a 50-point pace in his rookie season.
I know. So you're banking on him to come back. I personally think that's
you take
fine.
That bet.
Yeah, I take that bet as well. Like maybe he had a bit of a down year this year, but if you put him in a consistent role like that, then sure. Engvall you think is gone, so that leaves 2 empty lineup spots on the premise that Kerfoot leaves as well, or Kerfoot is exposed to in the expansion draft. Man, what do you do? Like, that's why I think Engvall stays because you don't have many solutions after that. And especially in a flat cap year, it's not like you have the luxury to go out and sign somebody on the waiver wire. And if you do sign somebody, it's going to be somebody way worse than Alexander Kerfoot, man. That's like, yeah. That's the predicament.
You can't build your team through free unless you're getting TJ Brody. You're likely not going to be able to build your team through free.
So whether they swing a trade or something, or maybe even like convince Seattle, like they don't even have enough draft picks to even convince Seattle not to take Kerfoot if they even really wanted to do that. Like I don't know what happens after that, like because that's kind of like perfect world talk ish and. If you put Jason Spezza on your 3rd line, I mean, I guess you could do that, but like
don't do that. I get he had he had more points than like Josh Anderson. He even had more points than Chris Kreider, shockingly, I found out. And he was so. He can even jump up in roles. Like he can play in the top 6 with Nylander and Tavares in short moments. Obviously, you don't do that over the long sample size. But he's a player that thrived in that 4th line position. That means he should probably stay there because that's a position where he's.
You're right about that. So I don't know what happens with those 2 empty spots on the 3rd line. I mean, does Adam Brooks finally crack the roster consistently? Maybe. Behind him, I don't know. Like the first person I can think of behind Adam Brooks is Nick Patan, but like I don't think he's making.
Maybe Dennis Malkin gets back in. He's an interesting guy to me, by the way. I think he is going to be a guy that will eventually play NHL games again for the Leafs.
Well, yeah, he's like
he's a young guy too.
Early 20s. Maybe, but like that's like. I think just because like the recency bias and stuff, I think that's just such a major step down from where they were like the year before. Yeah. Like I cannot picture a team where you have Engvall and Kerfoot on your 3rd line, and the next season you have Adam Brooks and Dennis Mulligan in their spots. Like
you'll see big moves there.
Shocking to me.
It's obviously going to be the talk of the town for the next 4 months.
Well, yeah, clearly, if just filling out roster spots with all these expiring contracts is going to be the talk of the town. So that's the forward core. Defensively, here's my only concern with defense, because I never thought the Kraken was going to take Kerfoot with that contract. I thought they were going to take Dermott or Hall. But now that I'm saying that
happen. That still could happen.
Because for the longest time I thought we were losing Hall in the expansion draft. That was like my only thought.
I wonder if the Leafs trade a pick this year to keep one of the players, like
one of their like 3 picks that they have left.
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe
they go for Columbus back in 2019.
So they would protect Riley. They would protect Brody. Obviously,
you protect Muzzin.
They would project Muzzin, so like that leaves open the other three. And that, let's be real, they're not taking Bogosian. Oh, speaking of, Bogosian's on an expiring contract.
Yeah,
You
he is
need to
too.
bring him back too.
You got to bring him back. And then,
wow,
what do you do with Timothy Liljegren, man? He's heading into his draft, 5th year since being
so
drafted.
here's the thing.
And I
this is what I
him.
mean. This is what I mean when I say middle of the road.
But that is good depth.
If they lose Hall, Sandin goes in that lineup. But we saw, I don't know if he can handle a full NHL season yet. And I know people are going to come at me in the comments and on Twitter and be like,
"Big take."
Yeah, that is one of my hot takes because
he has defensive issues. I could see it.
This is the problem with giving a player such a small sample size because you really don't know what you're getting. With at least with Hall, you know he's one of the shutdown guys on your team now. That's fine. But with Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Liljegren only getting in a handful of games again, you don't know what happens when you thrust them into a full-time role. Now, Riley Brody stay together. If you lose Hall, it's going to be probably Muzzin with Dermott, and then whatever the third pairing is. I know Leaf fans are very anxious to get Sandin and Liljegren in the lineup. Even Mac Hollowell is still developing, but I don't know what happens to them if this is. I don't even know if this is their time to be thrust into a full time.
I do want to say this though, Josh. It did seem like at the end of last season, even before the playoffs, by putting Sandin on that first power play unit, you're going to start to see. The Leafs are trying to see what life without Morgan Riley potentially could look like because he's entering the last year of his deal. You don't know if he's making it like he signed his contract the same day as Nazem Kadri. Kadri got 4.5, Riley got 5. He's going to be asking for $8 million at least, most likely on his next deal based on his performance. I think if I were him, I'm asking for 8. I don't know.
$8 million. That is a lot of money.
He's definitely going to pay him $8 million. Especially if he hits the open market.
Who are some comparables right now that are making $8 million?
I don't have the right in my. There are guys. I trust me. There are teams that value Morgan Riley as the number one defender.
Morgan Riley is not making $8 million.
I'm not saying the Leafs should be paying him that.
Oh my gosh, he is no. There's no way.
You really believe that? You really don't think? What do you see Morgan Riley making?
Okay, Morgan Riley's making $5 million right now. Okay. It's gonna be less than it. So maybe 6.5, 7. There's $8 million is way too much for Morgan Riley. I don't see. First of all, they need to re-sign that guy too if he's on an expiring contract. But
I would love him back, man. I know he had.
I would love him back too.
Blemishes
I would love him back too.
Everybody wanted to talk crap about him, but Morgan Riley's a guy who will always,
So if he's you said he's entering the last year of his deal next season. Maybe then Sandin forces your hand and you have to play him full time just to see what you have with that prospect. I think he's waited a long time to get to the NHL, and obviously he hasn't had a full time role yet. So I guess thinking out loud here, why don't you just throw him in there and have Liljegren on watching from? Okay, well Liljegren was drafted before him, so. You have to. I wouldn't be
surprised if Bogosian looks worse too next season. By the way, a player like that's play style usually doesn't age that well.
I know, but man, he had a great season. He had a great year with the Leafs.
Realistic to expect him to do that again? That's the big question.
But I say you bring him back. Bring him back for the depth.
Bring him back, and then you have that internal competition there with Liljegren.
Exactly. So, do you put Sandin in a full-time role? Oh man, I don't know why
I'm telling you, Dermott is not going to be back next season, and I think he's gonna. I'm telling you right now.
So there's two hot takes from Jordan Jacklin. It's Engvall gone, Dermott gone.
You think that's a hot take that Engvall's going to be gone?
Not
crazy, man. He's making 1.25. This is a flat cap world. There's not something has to change.
I think that's a bit of a hot take just because he's not.
You can't run back the same 12 forwards, the same 6 defensemen, the same 2 goalies. After losing 5 years in the playoffs in a row, something has to change.
Wait. I never said they were going to bring back the entire roster. Freddie's gone, so there's 5.5 saving right there.
One guy. You're saying one guy's leaving.
Freddie's probably gone.
Back?
If Kerfoot's gone,
I don't like Pierre Engvall. I like what he does in transition, but you can't be making 1.25, man. I know after that 20-game sample size where he played at a 40-point pace and looked really good, and he has showed flashes of it. I don't think they're going to be able to afford to keep him.
Okay, so if you let Freddie go at 5 and then Kerfoot's gone at 3.5, that is a nice chunk of actually, you know what? I just
you're gonna invest that in the Pierre Engvall.
No. That's not what I was gonna say. I literally, as soon as I said that out loud, I'm realizing now that chunk of money, the big chunk of that money, is likely going to Zach Hyman and probably nobody else. So
if you can keep him.
So okay, I don't know like the exact dollar that the Leafs are strapped up against the cap. I know it's tight. I don't think they are like right up against it, but I know it's tight. I think we can all agree that Freddie is gone for sure this year. No chance.
Yeah, even Kyle Dubas in his press conference, he made it quite clear that Jack's going to be the guy next season, and they're looking for a partner
and he should,
for him, whether it's Freddie or not.
He deserves it. He fully deserves it. So again,
I wouldn't honestly though be surprised unless Edmonton pays a buttload of money for Freddie Anderson. I wonder if he's willing to take a discounted rate to continue playing.
I wouldn't even take him at a discounted rate. What is that discounted rate?
Well, I think I wonder if he only makes like $3 or $3.5 million.
There's going to be a team that will pay him likely $5 million next year for sure. The goaltending market has continuously been oversaturated. I guess the
Panthers paid $10 million to Sergei Bobrovsky, but
exactly. And who wouldn't want to take a shot at Freddie Anderson? He was a serviceable goalie before this year when he got hurt. So they're going to be a team that takes him for sure. With that chunk of money going to Zach Hyman, I guess it's not really a hot take when you put it like that. I mean, if so, Hyman's there. Spezza's going to be re-signed probably at $1 million. Yeah, you're probably letting go of Engvall. At 1.2, you said, yeah, you're probably letting him go. Dermott, I think, is a hotter take because I think he still provides some value to this team. I think he still has that potential to, be a decent top six defenseman. But do you just let him walk too and substitute him with Liljegren and or Sandin? That is kind of the question. You're going younger and younger and younger there. And obviously with that less experience, but what do you do? Because
hey man, the Tampa Bay Lightning built their team like that. Anthony Cirelli was their third line center for a while. And there's been Team Canada discussions with him. I know he didn't exactly have a great season this year, but guys like Taylor Radish, Mitchell Stevens on their team. They thrust these players specifically in the bottom six mostly. They don't necessarily have to be their stars. Yeah, it's nice when you can draft Braden Point in the third round because he's small, even though he clearly should have been a first round pick in 2014. But when you are able to identify your need and you're able to play to your strengths and find these type of players through the draft, by the way, you have to draft these players or you have to be really good at trading for these players. These are the type of players that you need to win the cup, along with your guys like Wayne Simmons. It can't all be Joe Thornton, Jason Spezza, and Wayne Simmons.
Well, they were
a healthy blend.
On that note, they were basically all like that. The leadership group was basically all like had that type of player, like the body type and the skill set and everything. So if this is the year that they are kind of middle of the road, so to speak, for a lack of a better expression, maybe this is the year that the youth gets injected. Maybe this is the year we see Nick Robertson full time, Rasmus Sandin gets a bigger role, Timothy Liljegren gets a bigger role. If any year would be the year to do that, this is the year to do that. You have a bunch of contracts that are going out the window. You want to re-sign the guys that you want to re-sign, and would be a good time to see what you have in the farm system available. If now that we're all putting all these thoughts out there, Engvall gone, Kerfoot's out the door, Dermott's leaving. If all that goes, if all that transpires, and you don't, since it's a flat cap, you don't have the luxury to go out and sign a bunch of replacements that will all but certainly be worse than the guys that are leaving. This is the year to put prospects in the positions to succeed and see what they can do. Maybe.
And we are just about to head into our general NHL news segment to wrap up the show. But I just also want to say Seth Jones is not being traded for Mitch Marner, man.
Yes, guys. We've been over this. Mitch Marner's not being traded. Seth Jones is definitely not the return you want.
I do not want Seth Jones.
No. And also, we just committed to a well-rounded defensive strategy.
Good.
Our defense is good now.
It's great, actually. It's really good.
We need to keep it that way. Rumors. Yeah, just keep it that way, man. We need
scoring.
Seth Jones. We need we need depth scoring and not from the blue line, man. That's not it.
We actually improved in our elimination take-all game because we got shut out by Columbus 3-0 in Game 5. We actually managed to score a goal with 1:36 to go.
Yeah, okay, that's not a position you want to be in.
But with this, Josh, you covered the Winnipeg Jets, and it was a very interesting turn of events here in Game 1 in their second round series against the Montreal Canadiens. But all else first, we got to talk about the Mark Scheifele hit, and I want your opinion on it.
Yeah, I'm going to start by saying 100% a dirty hit. Sorry, Sean Avery. You were a dirty player for the entirety of your career. I don't think you have, the wherewithal to call a hit dirty and stuff. For all the Jets fans like Paul Maurice, you should be ashamed of yourself. I know you have to defend your players, but calling that hit clean? Are you kidding me? No, that was not a clean hit. Number two, for all the people that keep bringing up Nazem Kadri whenever playoff suspensions happen or dirty plays in the playoffs happen, you don't need to say that. Like, I assure you, I don't think Nazem Kadri is out there to get suspended. Please stop bringing him up when in situations that don't concern him. Number three, Mark Scheifele. I had a bit of a back and forth on Twitter last night. I saw Jesse Pollock from TSN make that tweet saying, before we go and attack him, here, actually, I can pull up the statement now and just read it because it got ratioed hard. And I mean,
I honestly didn't see that. Was it really that bad?
So he's a Jesse Pollock, huge Jets fan. I have a lot of respect for the guy. So he tweeted at 10:30 last night after the game. He said, before everyone attacks Mark Scheifele online, let's remember that he's not a dirty player. It was an emotional hit and it was uncharacteristic. He's a good dude and didn't intend to injure Evans. There are a lot of things wrong with that statement. And this is the problem that, like I said at the top of the show, this is the problem that I have with passionate fans, and I say that in quotation marks, passionate fans making statements in the heat of the moment. This is what it leads to. It leads to stupidity. This is what it leads to. And Leaf fans are notorious for this because after every loss or every bad play or anything, they all scream for players to be traded, fired, whatever. No, we need rational thinkers on hockey Twitter. We do. We desperately do, because all the fans are clearly way too jacked up to tweet anything rational these days. So, Jesse, I know you have some good takes, but this is a bad one. I'm going to break it down for people here. Probably the only thing that he got right here is Mark Scheifele is not a dirty player. He isn't. No prior history to suspensions or any dirty plays of that nature. Heck, he even went famous for not swearing at the refs. Like, you could not find a more likable guy in the league. So one dirty play does not make a player dirty. But on the flip side of that, this was a dirty hit. No question about it. It was an emotional hit, and it was uncharacteristic. It was a dirty hit, and it was unnecessary. So, to Sean Avery's point, who also went on a rant on Instagram about this, about how there should be no freebies in hockey, no freebies in the playoffs at all, the game is over. Like, I don't see how absolutely leveling a guy who's about to score in an empty net is, called for. And I'm going to bring this back to a Leafs situation, because I know this is a Leafs podcast, obviously, so I'm going to provide some context here. When the Jets were playing in Toronto back early this year, Mitch Marner was about to score on an empty net, and Neil Pionk came across the ice and tried to absolutely bury him. So obviously Mitch Marner didn't get hurt, thank God. I think Pionk missed the hit or something like that.
Yeah, he completely missed him. I remember
that. Where is the difference between those two hits, except for the aftermath that followed? So yes, it was emotional, but it was completely unnecessary. Like, he's about to score on the empty net. You're not even going for the puck, and instead absolutely destroy the guy. So he's a good dude and didn't intend to injure Evans. In this play, he's not a good player. Not a good dude either. Like, that's not what good hockey players do. And, I mean, the last sentence was brutal. Didn't intend to injure him. He practically shouldered him in the face and knocked him unconscious. I know everyone was like, "Oh, Jake Evans needs to keep his head up. Jake Evans needs to do this. He needs to stop focusing on the puck so much."
Stop with that, man.
Stop with that, man. Stop. People get popped all the time in the league, but that is a dirty hit. He left his feet. That was a dirty hit. We know this now. Oh man, the thing that pissed me off the most, he skated the length of the ice to hit him.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I don't care. Everybody was saying, Oh, but he stopped at the hash marks and glided into him. Oh my goodness. If you stop at the hash marks and you skated the length of the ice, you are still carrying all the momentum from where you started skating. It doesn't matter.
Such a vulnerable position too.
And such a vulnerable position as well. So I know the charging rule doesn't necessarily imply that the player has to stop skating, but he did stop skating. You're right. But that doesn't make it out of the rule. Like, that still is charging. That still is skating a great distance to hit somebody, which is the rule, by the way. So yes, Jake Evans in hindsight probably, obviously he's not going to know that someone's going to absolutely kill him because he's about to put the puck in the empty net. Like, obviously. This was a dirty hit. And I know Scheifele's not a dirty player, but given the circumstances, given that it was practically the end of the game, like a minute left, this is unnecessary. This is dangerous. We don't need this in hockey. We don't need things getting out of control at the end of games, because that happens a lot these days. And in my humble opinion, because I saw a bunch of different takes about this, I'd say if I was the Department of Player Safety, I'd say this warrants a 3-game suspension just because of the circumstances and everything. I know a lot of people said 1, a lot of people said 8, which is the same as Kadri's.
We do know, by the way, it is an in-person hearing. The maximum suspension he could get is 5 games.
Yeah, it's actually over the phone. It's not even.
I know they call it in person, I believe, but over the phone.
We know it's not going to be 8. It's probably not going to be 5. I'd say it's probably going to be 2 or 3 for that.
Yeah, and he'll be back probably in this series. Oh god.
Oh boy! And when that happens, expect all hell to break loose. But I do want to highlight the work of Nikolai Ehlers. He did a great job keeping Jake Evans safe when he was unconscious on the ice. Everyone was kind of jumping on Scheifele and all that stuff, and they were getting dangerously close to Jake Evans, who was, as you know, unconscious on the ice. So kudos to Nick Ehlers. He definitely did something that will kind of like it definitely it made the rounds on social, which was great to see. So Nick Ehlers, good player, good man, good guy.
We need more players like that in the
we need more players like that, exactly. So but like I know, and Mark Scheifele, I know Cassie Campbell Pascal pointed this out on the broadcast last night. She said that when Scheifele was walking down the tunnel, you could tell the moment he realized he made a mistake, because after the heat of the moment washes away, you kind of think about your actions and all that stuff. So not that that's an excuse or anything. I don't think Mark Scheifele is a dirty player. I don't think Mark Scheifele deserves to be hated for this. Actually, sorry, let me retract. Yes, obviously he's going to get hate for it. But we can't ignore the fact that just because someone is not a dirty player, so to speak, dirty plays can still happen. And that was horrifying to watch, especially after everything that happened with Tavares and everyone debating whether that was on purpose or on accident or something. This was fully on purpose, and you could tell, man, just the camera zeroing in on him. You can tell he's not even trying to go for the puck. Like, it's one thing to try and break up a goal and try and like use your body to get position and then stick check the guy. He literally laid him out, just completely unnecessary from Scheifele. And honestly, the fact that he was such a clean player before this makes this all the more disappointing.
I just want to send a lot of thought wishes to Jake Evans as well.
Jake Evans. I know
it's such a
it was his birthday yesterday, and
yes, it was.
And he this is already his 4th concussion, the 2nd time he's been stretchered off the ice before. Obviously that's an entirely other topic of discussion, but I really feel for the kid, because this guy's 25 and he's already had 4 concussions and he's barely been in the league. Like, that's dangerous stuff. And I'm not going to, he's definitely not going to call it a career or anything like that. But I like, at that rate, if you have 4 concussions,
you have to be careful. Like Andre Kase, who's in Boston right now, legitimately looks like he's going to retire because of all his concussion issues.
Yeah.
When you start getting into that magnitude,
it's dangerous.
And those
it's
numbers,
really, really dangerous. And it's something that,
like, you don't even think about hockey at that point. You think about
and it's something that needs to be talked about more by both media and hockey fans alike. This is nothing to joke around with. And as someone who's experienced concussion symptoms before and been in that, in those types of situations, this is dangerous stuff. And it's so dangerous because you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. You really don't see the long-term, short-term effects of concussion problems. And for Jake Evans, I mean, he's kind of just starting his life out, and he already has four on the board, four severe ones on the board. And that's just uncharted territory and really, really dangerous if you're a hockey player. So well wishes to him. I heard he's doing better, which is great. We all know he's going to be out indefinitely, but yeah, just just a disappointing situation overall, and from Mark Scheifele for sure.
So I just want to point. Okay, so my final question to you, Josh, to wrap up this show, is how are the Winnipeg Jets going to fare in this series with the Montreal Canadiens? How can they come on top against a strong 5v5 team, especially with their, they got a top six of Dubois, Nikolai Ehlers. They're going to be out without Mark Scheifele by the looks of it for a few games here, but they still got Blake Wheeler. They got a bunch of impact guys. I like their movement on the power play. They just couldn't beat Price that first game. I do think they are likely going to beat them, but Montreal is going to give them a scare. What do you think?
Man, for two teams that he didn't expect to make the second round to make a prediction about that series, that's pretty crazy. And honestly, I'm honestly going with Montreal in this series. And I feel bad saying that because I was super, super impressed with the Jets' performance. I wrote about it a ton. Super impressed with their performance in the first round. But I'm considering all the factors here, and there are and the odds are really stacked up against Winnipeg right now. So number one, Carey Price is playing like a god. Even if Winnipeg superstars do show up, it's going to be near impossible to beat that guy. Number two, Mark Scheifele's gone, and for any stretch of time, Mark Scheifele is one of the best players in the league, one of the best centers, one of the best people. Up until this point, I guess. With the Jets missing him for what is likely going to be 2, possibly 3, maybe even 4 games, that is devastating. And the Jets have struggled with injury before. When Blake Wheeler was gone, Dubois was gone for a while. This is going to be tough, and their depth is going to be tested a lot. So just take a look at the scoring and how it's going to shift. Kyle Connor's going to be called upon. Nick Ehlers is going to be called upon. Pierre-Luc Dubois hasn't scored in forever is going to be called upon. That's not a great recipe for success, and I really don't know how you can. We saw it with the Leafs. It's incredibly hard to play when one of your top players is gone, and whether that's injury or suspension or whatever the case may be, it's all the same. It's hard. It's incredibly challenging to put together an effort that has resonated with this team for a while. It's hard to do that when one of your cornerstones is gone. Number 3, and I think the most important thing to consider here, is that Montreal now has every reason to beat Winnipeg. They're pissed. They're mad. They're motivated. Even with Scheifele gone, I don't think they're going to take the rest of the team very lightly. So with all those things considered, this is a tough one for the Jets for sure. And I wouldn't have been on that stance if the events of last night didn't happen. Trust me, I would have if last night ended peacefully and Jake Evans put the goal in the empty net. I would have said the Jets don't really have a reason to panic because it's only game 1. But now, with all the scariness, Montreal, whatever they were saying at the end of even at the post-game conference, what they were saying were basically like underlying threats to the Jets team as a whole.
Edmondson, man, you could tell.
Scary stuff. Carey Price was great last night, and Scheifele's going to be gone. I mean, all of that stuff considered, that is plenty to change a series, to change the dynamic, to shift the dynamic of a series. We've seen things shift series that were way less impactful than that. This is a lot of things to consider. This is a lot of things going through the heads of the players entering game 2 tomorrow. We're going to have to see, but I'm picking Montreal as a winner now because just of how everything went down.
Yeah, I've shifted towards Montreal as well. I am curious to see how Jesperi Kotkaniemi continues to play. I believe he's 1 goal behind. I saw this from the Hockey News yesterday. Behind Wayne Gretzky and Sidney Crosby for most playoff goals scored before the age of 21.
Man, imagine. Healthy scratch in the first couple of games and comes back and is an impact player.
It is funny too that series with the Leafs definitely saved Dominic Ducharme's job because he has made very, very interesting decisions, I will say. Even though I will say, I mean, the Montreal fans really hated Eric Stahl when he first got traded out of Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo fans hated him as well. He's starting to actually produce in this postseason. You're really starting to see Corey Perry play well. And there's a lot of players on that team that are really starting to, when you win the Stanley Cup, everybody kind of has to be going. That's why teams lose most of the time in the playoffs. Something goes wrong. That's what we've seen with the Leafs. Oh, Muzzin got injured. Oh, Tavares got injured. It didn't go right. To win the Stanley Cup, almost everything you got to do has to go right. And even if something goes wrong, you got to fix it with the right. You have to be able to make the right decisions.
And that's going to be the key for Winnipeg now with Mark Scheifele indefinitely suspended. Like, it's guaranteed that he's going to be suspended now. With that, and Pierre-Luc Dubois struggling and everyone else having to kind of mold their game to fill the void that Scheifele leaves behind, a lot of things are going to have to trend in the right direction for Winnipeg to come back in this series, because it's one thing to lose a game one. It's one thing to lose game one and lose your best player for multiple games after that. So it's going to be interesting, and I'm really curious to follow that storyline heading into the rest of the series, because game 2 goes tomorrow and Friday, game 3, like it's going to be, or sorry, game 2 goes tomorrow, which is Friday. And it's just going to be interesting, really. And I'm kind of disappointed in that, because Mark Scheifele is a guy that changes series in a good way. This is not a good way to change the dynamic of a series. And it's overall just because I guess I'll just leave it with my final thought here, because if the Jets do lose this series, everybody is going to look back to what happened at the end of game 1 and be like, was that necessary? And the answer is going to be no. So that's it. Like, if the Jets win, then that's probably going to be down the drain. But if they lose, which it's kind of trending in the right direction now with all things considered, it's unfortunate for Scheifele, but that's probably going to be the defining moment of this series for sure.
This is going to be a very interesting series to watch for all things that we have discussed. And we obviously know whichever team plays Colorado is most likely losing. I'm sure Montreal could honestly give them a fight in 5 or 6 games, because they were able to do that.
I want to see a Colorado-Tampa final. That would be wild.
Final. And, as one season comes to the end for Leafs fans, there are things to look forward to in this playoff run.
Nick Robertson. Look forward to Nick Robertson.
We have a Seattle expansion draft coming up. We have the regular draft coming up. My Buffalo Sabres, the team
are about to ruin Owen Power's career for the
first overall thing. It's gonna be okay, guys. I hope so. You have to hope it's gonna be okay, right?
Yes. Leaf fans, one last thing before we wrap. Just please don't panic anymore. It's okay. Kyle Dubas is a very good general manager. Brendan Shanahan wants to stick to the plan. Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews, Nylander, Tavares aren't going anywhere. Everything is going to be fine. If it takes a couple more years, it's fine. But you know what? I want you guys to consider that when the Leafs do raise the Stanley Cup in the next decade or so, all of this stuff that we're panicking about now, we'll just be laughing at. So everyone just needs to take a deep breath and relax.
It's funny, Josh, because everything you just said is like the worst case scenario for.
I know. I explore all options here. I explore all options. Just remember, it'll all be worth it when we finally bring the cup back home here to Toronto. It's gonna be fine.
And it's gotta happen sometime, right? And
it has to.
Yeah. I think it will eventually happen. And with that, I just want to say thank you for listening to the Babbling Buds podcast. These first few episodes have really been great, and Josh was awesome in this one. Remember to follow him on his Twitter at @JoshKim_, as he posts some great photos and loves to rave on people's food takes. I've noticed. That's the thing you do, Josh. Any food takes?
I tweet about a lot of different things, so give me a follow. Also, check out my work at joshkimphoto.com if you ever want to get in contact. I do more than just writing. Spoiler alert. So go visit my website there. Jordan, thank you so much for having me, man. This was great. I love talking hockey, especially if it's about the Leafs. And I'm glad you consider me a rational mind on Twitter.
Oh, I do. And I do just want to say, it is sad for me to announce, with the Leafs losing, I have decided to cut the show down to 1 episode per week. It will allow for better content and more topics of discussion, but we will still be bringing great guests like Josh on, Nick from last week. We're going to be talking about everything off-season related to this team. We're going to be covering the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're going to be covering it all. And once again, thanks for listening and watching, and we have babbled enough for today. Until next time.